A major flaw we have as humans was originally a survival instinct. This survival instinct was setting boundaries for ourselves. Let's say a human eats a mushroom for the first time before information existed about mushrooms. Then he gets really, really sick. Well, he would tell the others not to eat all mushrooms. The boundaries that he set, he thinks are beneficial, and the tribe will go along with him because he tested it and it got him really, really sick. I believe we do this today, but we're doing it in the idea battlefield. We have created a modern climate where certain ideas, certain mindsets, values, or ways of thought are considered off limits, and there's boundaries placed around those things. Of course, setting boundaries has provided us different advantages in the past, whether it was not to approach other people, or whether it was not to eat certain foods, or whether it was not to set foot in certain lands. The modern society has taken the flaw that comes with boundary making and applied it to our own thought. Today, working with your mind is so much more valuable than working with your hands, such as the ages of past. So it only makes sense that the boundaries that we used to have for the working man that would work with his hand is now being applied to the man that works with his mind. Boundaries are set up by people who did something that was disadvantageous to them, and the collective said, we're not going to do that anymore because it's harming us. So really what's happening now is that since we're all working with our mind and contributing to the human endeavor on the path forward of progression for humankind, we are telling certain people's mindsets that they shouldn't have those because it is actually inhibiting our growth as a human species. But I believe that we have to have a complete open battlefield. Like we said, it's an idea battlefield. We have to have we have to let these ideas be pitted against themselves so that the good ones survive and last. If we apply this to the school system, we see that teachers are being taught certain ways to think and that they are going to pass that down onto the students that they teach. There are boundaries put around the things that you're allowed to say, believe, or do. There are certain things that are considered acceptable. Let's keep in mind, though, that the boundary breakers of the past got us to where we're at today. If you were to tell somebody in the Dark Ages that there was an electromagnetic field around everything and that light was the same source as radio waves, light is the exact same thing as radio waves, just in a different frequency, they wouldn't understand what you're talking about. They would actually maybe even call you crazy. They would say that you're going into a direction that is disadvantageous to the growth of the human species. We as humans say to set boundaries for things that are threatening. When we come into this world, we want to not end up in a negative state, whether that be dead or poor. So our brain says, what should I be looking for things that are threatening? And we say, anything, just always be looking. So what ends up happening is we cling to people and systems and other things that we see are out to help us, whether that be our parents or the school system, etc. We're looking at these things because we've come into this world and those things were there for us to be able to use and to be able to benefit from. And we cling on to those because our brain is saying, don't go down a path that is negative for you. We then develop a trust for the school system. We develop a trust for our parents. And we think and we believe that the boundaries that they have set are beneficial for our growth. So when you go to school and they feed you the food that they feed you, or you're at home and you watch these TV shows that are not put behind a boundary wall, you assume that this is a good thing. You assume that these things are not actually out to harm you. And then when you kind of get older and develop your own sense of what's really going on, you realize that there actually is a selfish motive behind really everything that's in our world, whether it's the school system that is having children believe a certain mindset and set of ideals that are set in place by the current society, or whether that's the way that your parents wanted you to be upbrought. And you kind of looked at your parents at a young age like they're superheroes, they must know everything. But as you grow up, you realize they're like you, and everybody has their own selfish desires or problems. and inconsistencies. What we're getting at really is that the boundaries that humans set are not always the best for us. The boundaries that we set to say, don't do this, this has already been accomplished, you can't go this direction, this is going to harm you. The boundaries that we set as humans that used to help us is now one of our biggest flaws. For hundreds of years, humans have had an upbringing a certain way with certain boundaries in their societal systems and with their parents and with the world at large. Boundaries to not think this way, but think this way. This is the beneficial path. This is the disadvantageous path. But we're at a point right now where we are taking these boundaries and we're making them concrete through the use of AI and the internet and different things that are in a developing stage right now. And we're laying the framework for these boundaries we're laying the framework to letting these boundaries control us. Let's say somebody in the dark ages had access to something like ChatGPT or the internet. Anything they would be looking up, the internet's going to tell them that it's true. A lot of that is going to be proved wrong, or we don't have access to a lot of that information. I was having a conversation with ChatGPT recently. The conversation that I had was about the electromagnetic fields that surround all of us. Of course, the electromagnetic spectrum was just discovered not even 200 years ago. So for such a new concept, some of these things that it was telling me were completely concrete. It's actually interesting to know that light is the same as radio or is the same as X-rays. It's just all at a different frequency. And we actually, as human beings, have an electromagnetic field around us, such as 3 feet or longer. They don't really know. When you get into quantum physics and the double slit experiment, if you want to go look that up, you're kind of going into a realm that is completely almost untouched and undiscovered. But when I talk to AI, it is presenting me things that it's saying are fact, that it's saying are 100% concrete, and it is well established, when a topic that is not even 200 years old is not well established. That is not well established and an old topic that we have discovered everything in. It's almost encouraging us to be stuck within our own boundaries. So I'm encouraging you to be a boundary breaker in other aspects, in other ways of life. AI is going to read everything that us humans give to it. And it is going to accept these things as fact. Even if we say, AI, some of this might not be fact, some of it is still changing, it is still going to take what we give it at face value and understand that what we are giving it is all it has to work with. We still need humans to be making these discoveries. We still need humans to be thinking outside the box and be boundary breakers. If we made a startling discovery that the way that we understood the smallest form and building blocks of life, such as atoms, is completely different than the way we understand it, it's a complete rework to the way that we as humans understand it. Let's say there was a major scientific discovery that proved that it's not necessarily a nucleus surrounded by electrons, and that nucleus is made up of neutrons and protons. What if it was a different way that we understood it? Now, of course, that might be a low chance of happening, but it is possible, right? And so let's say that did happen and ChatGPT was not updated and we tried to convince ChatGPT that the way that it understands atoms is not true, it would shut us down. It would say, no, this is fact. This is what scientists have discovered. I'm trusting what the science says. AI inherently can't be a boundary breaker because we have put boundaries on it. It is a boundary builder. AI will only enforce what we give it. It will enforce those things the best that it can, because that's what it's really trying to do, is give us the most valid information that it can based on what we gave it. I don't believe we should be relying on AI. I think that humans and the intrinsic value that humans have to think outside the box, be creative, put heart into things, is something that could never be discovered with something that doesn't have life. So don't trust AI and really anything at face value, and understand what your own boundaries are and what the boundaries that the world has placed upon you are. And understand that you are allowed to break those boundaries if you see fit.